Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us here at our special Axios Houston event. My name is Russell Contreras, and it is great to be back in the city of my birth here in Houston, Texas. Thank you for joining us. It's Climate Week, so we have a lot of beautiful and wonderful guests today to talk about what's going on in the city of Houston around sustainability. Our first guest, however, is the Chief Resilience and Sustainability Officer for the city of Houston. Please welcome to the stage, Priya Zachariah. Priya, thank you for joining us, please. So, Houston, I grew up here as an oil and gas city. I remember the oil and gas booms of the 80s. I remember the movie Urban Cowboy with John Travolta, who used to eat at Nifas, by the way. But the city is changing around sustainability and resilience. I never thought I would see this. But talk a little bit about what's going on in Houston around sustainability. This, for many years, was an oil and gas enclave, but something's going on here. What's going on?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I think this is going to be a great conversation around resilience and sustainability. And I saw that you titled your event as Houston's Sustainability Push. I think we should call it Resilience and Sustainability Push. And I'm happy to explain what that means. So I always think you can't tell the Houston story without talking about growth. If you look at the growth of Houston, right now we have 2.3 million people just within the city of Houston. If you look at the greater Houston region, which is the 8-county region, that's over 7 million. And if you look at demographic projections, this region is going to grow to over 10 million people by 2040. Right now, we are the 4th largest city in the US. We may be the 4th most largest as in sense of populous city. We may be the 3rd most populous city in the US pretty soon. All this to say that Houston is a place where a lot of people are moving to. It's a place, it's one of the biggest economic drivers in Texas. And the question really is, how do you continue to be a city that grows, but also grows sustainably, also grows by thinking about community resilience and equity, and how do we do that? So to explain a little bit about what sustainability means for us as the city of Houston, what resilience means, we have 2 plans in the city. We have the Resilient Houston Plan, and we have the Climate Action Plan, which really talks about greenhouse gas emissions reductions. So sustainability is essentially reducing your greenhouse gas footprint as a city. So across multiple sectors, it's transportation, it's energy, it's the building sector, it's how you manage your waste. Houston's resilience plan, and resilience is defined as kind of this inbuilt capacity for communities, neighborhoods, systems, buildings even, or even personally. How do you not just respond to shocks and stresses, and even climate shocks and stresses, but beyond that, how do you grow and thrive and transform? So when we talk about the Resilient Houston Plan, I would encourage everyone, Russell, to take a look at both of the plans, easily available on our websites. The Resilient Houston Plan talks about building this kind of capacity across multiple scales. So it's the individual, it's the bayous, it's the transportation networks, it's our communities, and ultimately it's the city and the region. And when we talk about resilience, we hold true the assumption that how communities and systems respond to climate shocks and stresses is really a measure of how vulnerable they are. And that vulnerability can come from a place of socioeconomic vulnerability, the education attainment gap, lack of access to fresh food, lack of access to essential mobility. And so we want to be thinking about building capacity across all of those in a way that's equitable, and that's what builds resilience and makes communities better able to withstand even climate shocks and stresses. So Houston's definition of resilience is not just climate resilience. It is climate resilience and beyond. It's also socioeconomic resilience. And so that's kind of the umbrella framework within which our climate action plan is one of the subsets.
There's always anytime you have a development, there's always a concern about displacement. I look out here at the farmer's market 40 years ago.
Right.
I would have never thought we'd be here at a nice middle-class bougie place having beautiful bougie tacos. But yet, anytime you have resilience and development, there's a risk of displacing people that have been there for generations. How does one balance that?
I think that is a great question in the sense that you do need to balance growth and densification. That's what you're seeing inside the loop. Our land use is densifying. There's more of a demand for residential and all of the services that go with it, retail, commercial, offices, and all of that. And so that's the change that you've rightly identified inside the loop. How do we make that resilient? How do we make that enduring is to ensure that displacement doesn't happen. So you want to make sure that affordable housing is in the mix with market rate housing. And those services and that access to housing is front and center as we think about developing market rate communities. So I think that's just one of the ways that there's many tools in the toolbox when you think about affordability and kind of battling gentrification and making sure vulnerable communities are not displaced or priced out even. And that's just one of the examples on how one can do that.
I come back to Houston and I immediately remember this is my hometown when I feel the heat and I get in traffic. Right, sitting there on I-45, it's bumper to bumper, but yet there's something that's happened here since I left is this mass transit system here that we've developed. Do we need more of it?
100% yes, and I don't think there's a person in this room who's going to disagree and say, no, we don't need more mass transit.
What would that look like? Would it be above ground? What would that be like in 20 years if you had your dream?
So I have to tell you, Russell, it's really not a dream. We actually have a plan in the city of Houston, and that plan is with the the folks that do the transit here. It's Houston Metro, the Metropolitan Transit Authority of Harris County. Great partners for the city of Houston. We work with them a lot. I actually was at Metro before I came over to the city, and one of the things that Metro has put out there, and I'm sure this is familiar to many folks in the audience, is the Metro Next Moving Forward plan. So we don't have to envision it. It's actually a plan on paper, and many of those projects are being implemented. When we think about transportation, to go back to your question on your experience in Houston's traffic, if you look at the Climate Action Plan and our baseline climate impact assessment, we took an understanding of what are those biggest sectors that contribute to our greenhouse gas emissions. And transportation, no surprises, is almost 50% of that pie chart. And how do we address that? So fleet electrification, personally, if I were to drive an electric car, if you were to drive an electric car, we are not emitting from an internal combustion engine, so an ICE vehicle, right? But beyond that, the thing that I want to place at the center of this discussion is the fact that mass transit always should have a place when you're thinking about sustainability and when you're thinking about resilience, because it provides that essential mobility, connects communities to recreational, educational, job opportunities, to housing, generally to opportunity and by providing that essential connectivity. So mass transit, electrified mass transit even, has a big place at the table. So when you think about community resilience, but at the same time reducing your greenhouse gas emissions as a city. And so I would encourage everyone to take a look at the Metro Next Moving Forward plan. There's a range of solutions in that plan. So it's not just light rail, which goes from place to place, very closely spaced stations. It works very well inside the loop, for instance, if you have like denser neighborhoods. But we also have to overlay that with the needs of the commuters who are doing this point A to point B travel. They are coming into downtown or to the medical center, two of the biggest employers in the city, or they're going to other places. You see a lot of other places now also being employment clusters, be it the Woodlands, be it the Energy Corridor, be it Greens Point, be it Sugarland. So you do have to think about those multiple commute patterns. And then on top of that, you have to absolutely think about first and last mile connectivity. If you cannot get to your point of destination, which is a transit stop or a park and ride, and likewise, at the end of your trip, if you cannot walk or ride or to get to your final destination, your entire trip is not going to work. So that first mile and that last mile connectivity, be it sidewalks, the ability to bike safely, all of those, or microtransit within neighborhoods, all of those are a big part of the equation. So we need a range of solutions. Mass transit, electrified mass transit needs to be at the table as we think about electrified personal ways of moving around. So it's an ecosystem of solutions.
We all want a good EV. I would love a Tesla lowrider, and many people here would love a EV truck. But what does the infrastructure look like for the city of Houston to get EV charging stations around the city. Is that even possible?
Oh, 100%. It is possible. I mean, we have to start with the assumptions that all of these things are imminently possible for us to start making progress on executing. Again, I want to go back to this idea that it's not just one project or one action. We have to think about this holistically and as an ecosystem of multiple initiatives. So some of it is like the city has a pretty large fleet that we use for various purposes. We have in our climate action plan the goal of electrifying all of our city-owned light-duty fleet by 2030. And we're starting to make progress on that. But the other side of the coin is you have to be able to provide your EV charging infrastructure at city-owned facilities. Now that's just for city-owned vehicles. So what about that, like the remainder of the EV market potentially? We are thinking about how could we put charging at city-owned facilities. So we own the real estate and the facilities and the assets, but could we place charging that's public-facing? Our libraries, our parks, our multi-service centers, our recreation centers. If we had charging, and we're starting to work on that, this would be an opportunity, not just for city employees who work at those locations, but also for people in the community to come and charge their vehicles. So that's the second prong. And all of this helps us lead by example, like the city to move the needle on electrification and adoption of EV vehicles. But a third piece of the puzzle is how do you then penetrate the market and ensure that EVs are accessible to the community? So we have a partnership with a nonprofit. The city works with University of Houston, with Centerpoint, with Shell and others. And we have together created this nonprofit called Evolve under the mayor's leadership. Evolve's, one of their primary focuses is how do you reduce barriers so that we can have more community adoption of EV vehicles in the community. And that again includes that EV charging infrastructure. And the thing that I think we have to remember is most people charge their vehicles at home.
You also have a climate plan.
Right.
And if you were to come to me 20, 30 years ago, I would have thought that would never happen in the city of Houston, a climate plan, right? What does the climate plan look for a city that used to deem itself the energy capital of the world? How do you reconcile that?
I'm sure a lot of folks have heard the mayor say that, Houston is the energy capital of the world. We want to be the energy transition capital of the world. So I think it's really key to understand that Houston is really well positioned to lead the charge on energy transition. So as we transition to cleaner ways of producing, consuming energy, we also have to remember we have the workforce here, we have the essential infrastructure here, we have the innovation, the brains and minds here. So Houston is really well positioned to lead the charge on energy transition. And I'll give you an example. For instance, one of the big successes from from the city of Houston last month, we signed a memorandum of understanding with the Houston Community College. The Houston Community College responded to the city of Houston's one of our goals and targets in the Resilient Houston plan to train 500,000 Houstonians in resilience and energy transition jobs. And so they have placed that front and center in their curriculum and their offerings to the community. Something like that really moves the needle on training a green workforce for jobs that are, I don't want to say jobs of the future, those jobs are already here and they're continuing to increase in number. So we have to meet the moment in training our workforce. And once again, we strongly believe that Houston is, and for the reasons I stated, it's not just a belief. For the reasons I stated, Houston is very well positioned to be a leader in energy transition. In fact, a lot of people are paying attention to Houston's work in energy transition.
Our sponsor, the American Commissioner Council, it was beautiful to come and help us, bring us together. And they brought us our first guest here, Priya Zachariah. Please give her a warm round of applause. Fortunately, we're out of time, but we have more issues to talk about. We'll be right back after this.
introducing our View from the Top moderator and Axios publisher, Nicholas Johnson.
Yeah. Good morning. I'm Nicholas Johnson, the publisher of Axios. Thank you for waking up today and joining Axios here. I am super excited to be here today to be in Houston. This is our first in-person launch event for an Axios local newsletter, and none of it would be possible without our great partners, the American Chemistry Council. This great space, this delicious breakfast, this investment in local journalism, which I think is very important, not possible without our great partnership with the American Chemistry Council. So I'd love to bring them up here to chat with me for a bit about what's on their mind. First, Chris John, the President and Chief Executive of the American Chemistry Council. Chris, welcome.
Morning. Good to see you.
Thanks for joining us. And then Peter Huntsman, President and CEO of the Huntsman Corporation and Chairman of the American Chemistry Council. Peter, thanks for joining us. So early this morning, two of us showed up in ties and one of us did not. And I won't out that person, but we decided to keep it casual. Peter, Chris, thank you so much for being here today. When I got a calendar invite about an event on sustainability, I did not expect it to be in Houston, and then I did not expect it to be with the chemistry industry. So tell me what the angle is here.
There's no angle. It's, look, there's a lot of people talking about sustainability these days, particularly a lot of politicians. We're the folks who are actually doing it every day. So chemistry really is the science behind sustainability. So, here in Houston, the state of Texas, it's the biggest chemistry producing state in the country, second biggest producer in the world. And so those folks here in Houston are working on that. It's really an innovation hub, a technology hub, creating the technologies that will address sustainability going forward. So whether that's home insulation, battery technologies, those kinds of things that will reduce emissions going forward. Our folks are the ones that are doing that every single day.
Like, you can't not have the chemistry industry as part of that conversation.
You can't solve these issues without us.
Right.
That's exactly right. And so, just as an example here, again in Houston, we try to work in a spirit of partnership. So Hector Rivera with the Texas Chemistry Council, and I know you've got Commissioner Garcia from Harris County. We have a neat little project that we've been working on for a couple of years here where started, frankly, with a hard conversation with the local community about air quality in Houston. And after that conversation, what we did is we came forward and we funded air monitors, training to use the air monitors in Harris County to make sure that government officials understood what was happening inside our fence lines and could be confident about our operations and here in Houston.
Yeah, something you mentioned about the specifics, I want to come to you, Peter. Now, I love every conversation I have with you because it's so reality-based. We're not talking about things which might be true, we're talking about things that are true. And so, can you give some examples from maybe your industry experience of like how sustainability is actually happening like in the industrial process?
Sure. I'm as a chief executive officer of a chemical company. I'll tell you my angle. I'm an entrepreneur. It's to create wealth. And as we look just here in the Houston area, we have planes that fly nonstop into Houston now from Sydney, Australia, coming in from Dubai. The only reason they're able to make that distance is because they're made of carbon fiber. That has replaced virtually all the aluminum and the metal on the plane. That's a product that we produce. The windmills in West Texas are produced with our product. A lot of the solar panels and so forth, our products. Right here in the Houston Ship Channel, we recycle the equivalency of 1.5 billion PET bottles every year, and that's used as a raw material for the most effective polyurethane spray foam. Cleanest barrel of oil we'll ever use is that which we don't use. We insulate our buildings and our house to the very best R factors and our standards in society today. I can go on and on talking about our industry getting cleaner every year. Regulations get tighter, and they should. We ought to be, by the way, I think we ought to be holding importers of chemicals and chemistry to those same high levels of regulations that we have here in the United States. So our transparency is better. Our facilities are cleaner, and the products that we produce are the key. There's not a single electric vehicle, battery, wind, solar, lightweighting, adhesion that is made without our products.
This was the interesting thing that we've talked about before, is that there's a disconnect between, well, if you want something powered by solar or powered by wind, okay, well, how do you manufacture those? Like, and you go 3 steps behind in the supply chain, what do they find? They find you.
Well, I can tell you right now how many wind blades are going to be built in the next 2.5 years, because we are taking the pre-orders for the precursors, for the raw materials. And I can tell you right now, there's not a big wave of wind power that's coming into the world community. Whether it's in Europe or North America, the orders aren't there, the materials aren't there. So I don't say that pessimistically, I'm just saying that's the sort of transparency, that's the sort
I think the key is the connection, right? One doesn't happen without the other. And can you talk a little bit about how you as an industry leader view putting sustainability into that process?
Well, we want to see growth, and as you think about just some of the macro drivers, so you think about light weighting. The energy consumption is all about moving weight, right? The size of a car, size of a vehicle, and so forth. If we can make things lighter, if we can make things stronger, if we can make things cleaner, everything from an operating facility all the way down to a microchip processor. If we can make those things cleaner and do it with better chemistry, do it with better transparency, it's good for business all across. And Houston is ideally situated, being not just the energy capital of the world, but it's also one of the chemistry capitals of the world.
Right, right. I'd like to come back to Houston, and maybe, Chris, you could take this one. The economic impact of this industry. I mean, like, what can you share as far as like the importance of this industry for this community, and then also the jobs it creates?
Yeah. So over 100,000 jobs in the state of Texas in the business of chemistry and plastics. So those folks do very well. The average salary is about $120,000. Creates over $100 billion of economic output for the state of Texas. And that's billions of dollars in tax revenues that pays for schools, pays for roads. So there's a significant impact, but it's also going beyond that. Those are the scientists, the engineers, the technical folks who make all these things happen.
Right.
And so they're literally, not only do they make modern life possible, but they're creating that more sustainable future going forward. And we need more of those people. So if you're interested in innovation and technology, business of chemistry is a great place to be. Now, one of the challenges that we have is the pipeline coming into the industry is not as diverse as maybe it could be or should be. And 4 out of 5 students studying STEM disciplines, science, technology, engineering, and math, are white. And so 2 years ago, we took the initiative to try to expand our pool and to diversify our talent pool coming in. We created a program called the Future of STEM Scholars Initiative, or FOSSI for short. And in 2 years, what we've done is we've created 295 scholarships at 39 historically black colleges and universities, $40,000 scholarship that also includes internships, mentoring, great opportunities for these folks coming into the industry. Over 50 of those folks are here in Texas. And we've raised in just 2 years $17 million for that program. So we're really excited about what we've done so far and where that's going. Our goal is to hit 1,000 scholars in the next couple of years.
Right, right. And Peter, we were talking earlier, Huntsman employs how many people in this community?
We employ about 2,000 here in the greater Houston area, the Woodlands, Houston, Conroe, Texas, and about 10,000 on a global basis.
Right. And those jobs here in Houston, what are those like?
Those are all over in the Ship Channel, down in Pasadena, in Freeport, Conroe, up in the Woodlands. We've got lab centers throughout the area, and so it's really is. And then our contractors, you figure in our industry, for every full-time employee that a company like ours has, there are usually 7 to 9 jobs that are knock-on jobs. We hire as contractors for welding jobs and mechanics, machinists and drivers, and in the railroad industry and so forth. So it's if we're employing 2,000 in this area, there's probably another 15,000, 20,000 jobs that are dependent on those jobs as well.
Yeah. In the minute or so we have left, I want to toss out one big picture question. It's Climate Week now. There's going to be a bunch of events in New York this week and next regarding that. I'd love to get a sense from either of you from a big picture standpoint. Like, what do you see the role of the Chemistry Council and the industry in providing climate change solutions, being part of solving it?
So you can't solve the issue of climate change without the business of chemistry. So as Peter said, when you're talking about lightweighting vehicles, you're talking about alternative sources of technology, those things can't happen without us. And so we're going to help drive that solution going forward. And I know Peter's company is at the forefront of making that happen.
Nick, I remember back in the 1970s, my father worked in Washington. I lived there. But the Potomac was a dead river. The Cuyahoga regularly caught on fire up in Cleveland and so forth. As you look at the CO2 emissions in North America, our CO2 emissions as a nation, with an economy far greater and larger than we were in the early 1970s, we actually have less CO2s today out of the United States, out of the entire economy, than we did 40, 50 years ago when I was a kid. And we are making tremendous progress. And at times we need to step back. We need to understand how that progress takes place, how science has a role in that. We're living better lives today, better medicines, cleaner society, and we're on a great path. And we need to keep investing in the sciences. We need to keep moving society forward. And this is something that we ought to look at where we can make changes, where we can improve, but we also ought to be celebrating the fact that the EPA was created, it's been a success, and we ought to continue to move forward and work together.
Can I jump in on
Absolutely.
that? To his point of that tremendous progress has been made. It's not just the innovations that our members manufacture and create, it's how we do it. So we publicly disclose our greenhouse gas intensity at our energy use. And in fact, in the last 3 years, our greenhouse gas intensity has gone down 10%. So it's how we run our operations that also has a major impact.
Right. Yeah.
Correct, exactly. We're the cleanest, most competitive chemical industry in the world.
I think it's a good bottom line from the American Chemistry Council. Chris, Peter, thank you so much for
Thank you very
joining
much.
us, and thank you so much for helping make today happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now please welcome Axios Houston reporter Jay Jordan.
Good morning, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Jay Jordan. I'm the co-author of the Axios Local Houston newsletter. We're excited to have everybody here. We're excited to have launched a few weeks ago. If you haven't already, you're here, you might as well sign up for the Axios Local newsletter. It's axios.com/newsletters. Our next guest is going to be Dr. Robert Bullard. He is the father of environmental justice. And everybody, please welcome Texas Southern University's Dr. Bullard. So let's dig right into it. What are some of the biggest examples that you can tell us of environmental injustice in Houston, in the region?
Well, if you look at things that everybody have to do is breathing, you can see that the right to breathe is not equally distributed in terms of where you live. If you divide Houston in half, and east side, west side, it's clear that those two halves are not created equal in terms of communities on the fence line with many of our industrial facilities are placed at greater risk in terms of health, flooding, etc. So that's a big issue, and a lot of it has to do with land use, decision-making, and unequal protection, and some communities not given adequate infrastructure that makes for a healthy lifestyle and healthy living.
What could we do as a city, as a government, as individuals to obtain environmental justice? What does that look like?
Well, I wrote a book called Invisible Houston, The Black Experience in Boom and Bust, 1987. That's 35 years ago. Many of the solutions that were called for way back then is basically equal protection when it comes to the laws and regulations, when it comes to ensuring that resources are spent in a way so that it's not how much money you make or what zip code you live in or how much access you have to political power. We have to somehow democratize and harmonize the way that we see healthy, livable, and sustainable communities. And in many cases, this whole overlay paradigm, some communities have the wrong complexion for protection. I wrote a book, that's 2012 book. And it's real, it's not a slogan, it's not a bumper sticker. And what we have to do is value all communities, regardless of the income, the geographic location, or the ethnic or racial makeup.
What is the local government, either the city of Houston, Harris County, other municipalities, what are they doing right to help ensure environmental justice?
Well, I think the first thing is acknowledging the fact that there's a problem, and then marshal the resources to bring to bear the priority and the urgency of getting it right, whether it's dealing with responding to this climate crisis, which is on us right now. We're not talking something into the future, and making sure that when resources flow, those resources follow need, and we bring more of the voices into the room, not just top-down individuals who have PhD degrees or law degrees or rocket scientists. We are Space City. But the fact is that we need communities that are on the front line who have PhDs in living to make their voices heard and those decisions that can impact real transformative change. That's what we need today in Houston, Texas, and the U.S.
How do we get there?
Well, it's a complex, intertwined, interwoven challenges. But I think the fact that Houston played a major role in getting men on the moon, and if we can have that as one of our North Star challenges, I think we can, if we commit and understand that when we somehow don't address this issue that's facing us, we had 3 500-year floods back to back to back, and we used to plan for disasters June through November, but Winter Storm Uri hit us in February, so we have to think about a 12-month, 24/7 solutions that can address these converging challenges or converging problems. With it deals with addressing poverty, addressing issues around health, addressing issues around access to clean water and clean air, and even something as simple as having access to a park, green space. And for example, 74% of people of color live in what's called nature-deprived neighborhoods, and compared to 23% of whites. Houston is 75% people of color. Houston does not somehow escape those statistics. So we have to talk about correcting those imbalances, those inequities, those disparities that have gone on for too long. We have the mental power and the brain power to do it, but I think it's a matter of commitment, will, and to say that we're gonna address this now and not kick it down the road.
What kind of trends nationally in terms of environmental injustice have you seen? Jackson water crisis comes to mind. Has Houston been immune to? And I hate to use the word immune if I can't knock on wood, but what have we missed out on?
Yeah. Well, I think we could travel to Jackson, but we don't have to travel. Right here in Houston, there's a cancer cluster in Northeast Houston, in 5th Ward Cashmere Garden, that's been known for years. And that community, mostly black and Hispanic, have had to wait for justice. At the same time, people are sick, their homes, their properties devalued, their community basically is disrespected because they're having to wait. And this is not an accident, this was something that happened. And Union Pacific, I'll call names, basically need to do the right thing. Need to clean up that site, make that community whole, and do the right thing. So when we talk about environmental justice, when you discover a problem and you allow that problem to fester and you allow the people to die, that's one of the worst kinds of environmental injustice. That's like a poster child for environmental injustice and environmental racism. Because we know, for example, if this kind of pollution and discovery happened in River Oaks, we would not have families having to wait year after year after year. So the injustice, the disaster was one, but waiting is the second disaster. Having to wait is that second disaster, and we need to eliminate those kinds of textbook examples.
So if Houston were to experience a catastrophic hurricane, our next big disaster, how would communities of color or poorer communities be affected different than white or affluent communities?
Well, you know, the scenario is not that complex. Those who have contributed least to the problem in terms of greenhouse gases and the issue of this climate crisis feel the pain first, worst, and longest. We've seen this in all of the major severe weather events. And again, a lot of it has to do with the extent to which neighborhoods and their residents have less resilience, less infrastructure protection, flood mitigation protection. And so it means if we get another major event, those communities that were hit the hardest in Ike, in Harvey, in Winter Storm Uri, those are the same communities that get hit the hardest, have few resources to bounce back. So that means that we have to prepare for these disasters and ensure that we can predict where the most damages are going to occur. And then we have to also address the way that funding, the recovery dollars, are sent down to these areas that are hit, like Harvey. We have to make sure that when the money goes to Austin from the feds, from FEMA, that money does not get stopped in Austin and then get distributed in a way that's the second disaster. So it means that we have to move fast and furious to create climate-resilient communities, and that has to be equitable. I mean, it's no accident that the communities, after recovery dollars go in, the recovery tends to make white communities better off in terms of their wealth creation. Because if you look at how it works is money follows money, money follows power, money follows whites. If you use cost-benefit analysis, the money is going to go to the $800,000 home on the west side, and $80,000 homes on the east side will get left out. That's what we need to fix. The money should follow need, and we need to make sure that those priorities get built into the administration's Justice 40 initiative, the bipartisan infrastructure law, and this new Inflation Reduction Act, where there's billions of dollars, in some cases trillions of dollars, that need to have that equity lens apply to all of the spending, and not just let somehow the shovel-ready projects that may have been pushed forward by political will and muscle, whereas other communities may not have been at the table and they get left behind. By the time they get to the table, the money is spent. We cannot allow that to happen going into this future when we're addressing climate and justice issues.
Mm-hmm. So you have communities who are suffering from environmental injustice, and then you have communities who aren't. In either of those cases, what is something that an individual can do to help combat environmental racism?
Well, I think what we've learned over the many decades doing this work, I've been doing this for four decades, probably long before a lot of folks out in the audience were born, but it's still an issue right now. What we've learned is that when we do not protect the least in our society, we place everybody at risk. That's true in climate, that's true in pandemics, it's true in all of the disasters that we face. So it means that we have to, as a society, we have to be more compassionate, more considerate, and to talk about community, not us versus them, but talk about community and how we build community, and we build community by this whole idea of lifting all boats. The weakest link can break a chain and can bring the whole thing down. That's the justice that we have been fighting for. Environmental justice, climate justice, economic justice, energy justice, food and water justice, health justice, and racial justice. So when we talk about these justice issues, it's just, it's just one movement. Just like I've written 18 books on this stuff, but it's just one book. Fairness, justice, and equity. Don't tell anybody. But the idea is bringing it all together.
That's perfect. I want to talk about the IRA before we leave. How do you see it impacting Houston and Houstonians?
Oh, goodness gracious. I mean, there's tremendous, resources in the IRA for dealing with transition to clean energy, $60 billion. There's $60 billion in there for environmental justice. We never had billions. That's with a B. So being creative as to how we can transition in a way, but do it in a just, fair, and equitable way. How we transition, we should not be leaving communities behind. When we talk about building in the issue of health, I mean, we have the world's largest medical center. It's like a city sitting in the city. But in some cases, that medical center might as well be on the moon because Texas has one of the highest concentration of uninsured. Houston, no exception. So what we have to do is to make health care and healthy communities accessible. When we talk about transitioning, we talk about energy justice. We talk about not somehow leaving some communities with these high energy bills. Energy poverty is real. So we have to transition in a way that's fair, just, and equitable. Houston could be that example that set the stage, or it could not. It could be the example of where we had an opportunity and missed it. And let's not be in that latter category.
Perfect. In our last minute, what excites you about going? What excites you that is happening in Houston?
Oh, goodness. What excites me is the fact that intergenerational mobilization, bringing different young people. Every social movement that has been successful in the U.S. has had young people and students pushing the envelope, moving, saying, no, we need to be aggressive about the urgency of getting this right. And I think we have lots of young people and lots of organizations that are now beginning to be resourced, and that makes a difference. When somebody calls you and say, we want to give you $5 million, you'd be surprised what you can do with money when you've been doing stuff without money. So that's the excitement. And it's like a breath of fresh air has entered our movement, and with young people coming together, that intergenerational mobilization, like veterans like myself, who've been out here fighting for decades, and don't have to fight it as hard because you got lots of folks doing this work. That's excitement. That's how you build movements and how you grow movements.
Perfect. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. That was a very interesting talk. Thank you, Dr. Bullard. Thank you, everybody.
My pleasure.
Please welcome back to the stage Axios' race and justice reporter, Russell Contreras.
And good morning again, and thank you for spending your morning with us. We really appreciate it, especially talking about topics of sustainability and climate change here in Houston. Our final guest is the Harris County Commissioner for Precinct 2, someone I've known for years, and saw him come up from City Council to the position he has now, and is also a family friend. Please welcome Harris County Commissioner for Precinct 2, Adrian Garcia. So, Adrian, your precinct is sprawling. It goes up from Aldine all the way down to the coastal cities, the small towns. It comes back up to Galena Park. It's a major hub of Harris County in Houston. And for many years, it was a place of oil and gas, jobs, providing good jobs. But now you're saying we need that balance between jobs, the economy, and clean air. What are some of the challenges that you are facing as the commissioner for this sprawling district with all these challenges? You're not only trying to introduce new programs to residents, but you're also trying to change minds, trying to change mindsets. What are you facing?
Well, first of all, thank you and good morning, everybody. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me. You know, I'll tell you that historically, Harris County has been behind in terms of thinking on creating approaches. My philosophy has been creating a good neighbor relationship with industry, with the community, with those who fight for the quality of our air, water, and land, and creating a synergy that brings us closer together. And that's why I'm so proud that the American Chemistry Council is a key partner of mine. And so the things that I've been facing is really from the county side that there has been a very, very lacking on infrastructure to create those effective relationships. You know, when I came in, I asked the pollution control director at the time what he needed in terms of his budget to do his job effectively. And he gave me this caught in the headlight deer kind of look. And he was like, I've never been asked that. And so, but now out of issues and necessity to a certain degree, what I've needed was a relationship with industry. And that's why I'm proud of Chris John and ACC, TCC, the Texas Chemistry Council, and ECMA, the East Harris County Manufacturers Association, for their partnership and their trust in my willingness to work with them and bring us closer together and demonstrate that we can be good neighbors to one another and show the activist community that it's harder to be in the same room at the same table working on solutions than it is to cast stones at the industry. We need the industry. We need them to be innovative. I was just talking to Mr. Huntsman about the things that he's doing with some of the trash in our waterway, how he's working to recycle that, turn it into insulation for underserved areas, for homes in underserved areas. How can you not support that? And so it's all about creating that neighborly relationship where we can talk to each other, work through challenges, create opportunity, and demonstrate that there is a great day in front of us.
Being a good neighbor can also be creating one project after one project at a time. You were recently tasked, and this is your pet peeve or your pet project, of creating a park, a sustainability park near Aldine that was very inclusive for children. Talk a little about that project.
Well, I tell you what, you know, special needs has never touched my family, but it's had a special place in my heart ever since I grew up. I didn't like bullying for any reason, but especially for bullying to anyone who had a disability of some sort. And so over the years, whether through my police career, whether as a council member, whether as a sheriff of the county, or today as a commissioner, the special needs community has been very, very important to me, just from the standpoint that we're all human beings, we're all God's creatures, and we ought to have dignity and respect offered to each one. But when I looked at the Aldine area and saw this just really flat piece of grass at James Driver Park, I tasked my staff back in 2019 to work with the physical, cognitive, and speech therapist community, to work with all of the other respective, the Houston's Commission on Disabilities, and really give the potential of a park great thought and great intention and what could be. So over the course of a few years and the investment of roughly $14 million, we have a state-of-the-art, the first of its kind in Harris County, to provide amenities for people of all abilities, young, old, special, whatever the situation, cognitive. And so I'm immensely proud of that and would encourage everyone to come out and visit it. It's in the 59 and Little York area. And people who see it, who knew it before, and who see it today are just shocked at the transformation of it. So I'm really proud of that. However,
there was a plant next to the park
Well, a plant that wants to come next to the park. You know, Houston is a great place for everybody. There's a lot of opportunity here, especially for business, because we are unzoned. And as a result, concrete batch plants have effectively had their way in Houston, Harris County, in our region for quite some time. We need, obviously, this building was built with concrete, so we obviously need it, and I got a lot of potholes in my precinct, so I need that concrete to help fix those roads. However, we do need to recognize that concrete batch plants next to residential areas are harmful to the community's health, their respiratory conditions. And in Precinct 2, I was mentioning, Russell, that I have some of the greatest disparities. I have the lowest median income. I have the lowest homeownership rate. I have the lowest educational attainment rate at the high school and post-high school level. I have the highest number of children and families without health insurance. I have the highest diagnosed diabetes, respiratory or acute asthma conditions, and the highest rates of cancer. So I take the community's health status very seriously, and I take seriously the issue that we lack a great deal of mobility on the east side of Harris County. So when a concrete batch plant gives no thought to who their neighbor's going to be, and that is a park specifically intended to welcome people with disabilities and pre-existing physical and health conditions, it strikes a terrible tone for me, and I'm almost at the point of saying it's offensive, but we need to really pause and get the state to be a better partner when we're creating these opportunities for business. The state effectively, TCEQ in particular, has really been a rubber stamp without really thinking about those situations in underserved areas like Aldine. How can the state not give thought to the fact that there is this park, and regardless if it was for special needs or not, a park that welcomes children and the elderly? How can the state not give pause to the idea that this batch plant would be on the fence line of it, and not encourage some other thought to the application?
Do you feel the state is a partner in other projects around sustainability? Like Governor Abbott, do you feel like he is up there being a sustainability advocate like you are? You guys are hanging out, drinking tequila, saying, let's talk about sustainability? You can be honest.
I intend to. Governor Abbott doesn't understand sustainability. And in my opinion, his perspective on sustainability is one of age old. Because until recent times, we have not talked about sustainability. And if anything, it was sustainability on how to continue to make money at the cost of. And so I wish Governor Abbott would read more on sustainability and recognize that there is a way to encourage industry growth, a way to create new economic sectors. But the way he directs the TCEQ, and listen, TCEQ may have its own director, but they work for the governor. So I put all blame and all responsibility and all obligation on the shoulders of the governor. He can do better. He needs to do better. And it's about time that Texas leads from the front and not from the rear. Is that honest enough?
That's very honest. At the same time, we're also having this debate about expanding I-45. Anybody who's been in Houston knows that I-45, I wouldn't say had been a train wreck because we don't have trains, but it's always been a challenge. But expanding it also means displacement, right? What's your stance on the need to give more transportation options, but also be cognizant about displacing people that have been historically displaced?
Well, the debate with I-45 is not my first rodeo, this current one, because I was on council when I last had to deal with TxDOT on I-45. They were at that time looking to take Hollywood Cemetery. They were looking to take significant portions of Woodland Heights. And they were using the backdrop of a once-in-a-lifetime sort of event where everybody evacuated because of Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. And so they kept showing all these pictures of all the cars stopped on I-45 under North Main. And I thought that was just immensely disingenuous to use that kind of scare tactic. But moving forward, we recognize that I-45 is an important corridor to our community, to our economy. As the commissioner who oversees the Port of Houston, I need freight to get in and out of the port. We need it on our shelves so we can fight inflation. But TxDOT does not know how to do effective community engagement to really understand issues and contexts that the community is concerned about, and making sure that displacement, that widening shouldn't be the only strategy that TxDOT has available to them. Just adding more lanes means that you're going to encourage more single ridership single vehicle ridership on the freeways, something we're trying to combat. So why not be more intentional with transit lanes? Why not be more intentional with coexisting light rail and the freeway system? So my job has been to, I supported the lawsuit against TxDOT to pause the project and try to create understanding why this is important for us. And so we've made progress. I want to thank our county attorney, Christian Menefee, because he has just been phenomenal at working through the nuances of the current lawsuit. And I also want to thank Roberto Trevino, who is the executive director of the Harris County Toll Road Authority, who has been the engineer in the room with attorneys, understanding and helping them understand what the final environmental impact study means, what the record of decision means, and how to maximize opportunity to make I-45 the best possible safe and healthy corridor that it can be. So that's where I'm looking for. I'm looking for progress. I'm looking for innovative thinking by TxDOT. I know that's wishful thinking, but maybe one day that TxDOT can be more innovative than they are. But I'm really encouraging that we find that common ground so that we can move forward. I-45 is a dangerous corridor. We can do better with it, but we need the parties to sit down and work through these details so that we can show that Harris County can really be at the tip of the spear to show how we can get things done for the right reasons, for the right people, with the right partners.
In our final moments we have together, you were neighbors to Ernest Aguilla, my late uncle, who was a World War II veteran, LULAC member, civil rights advocate. So I'm going to channel him real quick here, because you guys, I would catch you sometimes at his house. And he would, even in his 90s, drink tequila, slam it down, and ask us straightforward questions. So I'm going to do that in Ernest's voice. So, are you going to run for mayor or not?
I will say, Ernest, I love you, but I love what I'm doing as county commissioner. I don't have to deal with term limits, which means that I can keep doing what I'm doing for a very, very long period of time. Mayors will come and go, but county commissioners can get to stay for a long time.
Ladies and gentlemen, Adrian Garcia. Thank you for joining us, but before we go, I do want to plug Axios. Our founders recently wrote a book. It's come out today. It's called Smart Brevity. It teaches you how to write smart and tight and quick. So you all get those long emails from your bosses, and they go on forever. And you're looking, okay, what's the point of this? This will help you, trust me. So it's at your bookstores now. It came out today. It's a great read, and it's very powerful and effective messaging. And thank you to our sponsor, the American Chemistry Council, for joining us today. And thank you, all of you, for coming out. And one last applause for Adrian Garcia. Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
All right, man. Thank you.
Good job, brother.